Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to talk about how the DTCC not only facilitates crime, but also allows and encourages the creation of synthetic shorts and simply waives those margin calls. So I want to talk about how this actually impacts AMC. So stay tuned and let's make some money. And I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, Peter Han posted on LinkedIn saying this is a comprehensive overview of how short attacks have been occurring in the US equity market, in particular how naked shorts are facilitated in a number of ways and how the DTCC seems to be complicit in allowing this to continue. It also notes the limitations of the SEC and how political interference prevents it in being effective or proactive in curtailing such behaviour. And he said, as I've been saying for over a year on this topic, I believe the behaviour of certain actors in this regard has created significant systemic risk. One wonders if these actors have acted so wantonly it's almost like a poison pill defence. If margin calls were to be enforced by the DTCC to reduce leverage likely at play, it would collapse the market. And he said otherwise, how else to explain the rush last year to give NSCC daily margin call powers, only not to ever use them, and other transparency and collateral rules that are continually delayed, as well as audit systems like the CAT. So this article talks about how Wall Street creates counterfeit shares for AMC and GameStop, and how the DTCC completely allows this to slide. Not only does the DTCC and the SEC allow the creation of synthetic shares, they also waive margin calls as well when these funds end up in trouble. And it says stock manipulation and illegal naked shorting are two of Wall Street's dirty little secrets. And it said these techniques, which have been in use for many years, has led to Wall Street swindling the American public out of trillions of dollars. In the process, numerous new businesses were forced out of business and into bankruptcy. This is obviously very important as it not only impacts the investing public directly when they're investing in the market, but it also impacts them indirectly through mutual funds, IRAs, and retirement or pension plans as well. Now, this is obviously a very long and in-depth article that talks about broker-dealers and prime brokers, hedge funds and market makers, the SEC and the DTCC, and how these synthetic shares are actually created through the use of naked calls, continuous net settlement, fails to deliver, and much, much more. Obviously, I'll leave the link to this article down in the description below, but I've spoken about how synthetic shares are actually created a number of times on the channel before. What I want to touch on today is how the DTCC effectively covers this up, allows it to happen, and even encourages it. Now, allegedly, the securities industry and certain respected members of corporate America who like the profits from illegal shorting and certain criminal elements and our federal government do not want the public to become aware of this problem. Allegedly, everyone, including our elected officials, gets a lot of money, and consequently there's an active campaign to keep a lid on all of the illegal information. The denial of all these illegal practices comes from the industry, the DTC, the SEC, FINRA, and even certain members of Congress as well. Many of these members of Congress, the SEC and the DTCC, a lot of the time say that naked shorting doesn't actually exist and the creation of synthetic shares isn't possible. But you may have seen recently that on the 12th of August, the SEC charged a hedge fund for 3 years of naked shorting, but fined them only $125,000. Apparently Exempt tweeted saying two things. One, the accusation that naked shorting doesn't exist simply isn't true because the SEC are suing companies for the creation of synthetic shares. But it shows the SEC and the DTCC encourages the creation of synthetic shares because they only fined this massive hedge fund a mere $125,000, a slap on the wrist. This article says the SEC's order finds that from approximately June 2017 through to November 2020, IMC violated Regulation SHO by executing millions of short sale trades through the SDP while improperly relying on the bona fide market making exemption to the locate requirement for short sales. It says that IMC did not qualify for the bona fide market making exemption to the locate requirement because it was not engaged in bona fide market making activity. Therefore, this fund had been improperly using the market maker regulations and had been creating synthetic shares and naked short selling for 3 whole years. But obviously it says here that IMC consents to a cease and desist and a monetary penalty of only $125,000. Such small fines is obviously a sign that the SEC and the DTCC allows and encourages the creation of synthetic shares. Guys, if you haven't already, be sure to sign up to Moomoo right now using the link in the description below. Moomoo are currently giving away the most free shares they've ever given away, 13 free shares worth up to $2,000 each. Moomoo is very easy to use, it's incredibly customizable, they've got tons of technical indicators and advanced charting tools. From Moomoo's latest customer agreement, they officially state they do not sell your order flow to market makers and hedge funds like Citadel. Therefore, Moomoo is brilliant for buying those AMC, Ape and GameStop shares. Allegedly, it says the truth about counterfeiting remains locked away with the perpetrators of the fraud. The prime brokers, hedge funds, the SEC and the DTCC are all shrouded in secrecy. They actively and aggressively resist requests for the truth, be it with a subpoena or otherwise, aka with a Freedom of Information Act request form. And it says the SEC is supposed to be protecting the investing public from Wall Street predators. While some SEC staffers are underpaid and overworked, many of the top echelons of the SEC frequently end up in high-paying Wall Street jobs. Many of the top employees from the SEC, from the DTCC and from FINRA have either come from these large Wall Street funds or end up doing a short stint at the SEC and then go to a large Wall Street fund. Therefore, many of these top employees at the SEC and many of these top employees at these large Wall Street funds know each other outside of work, they're friends, and they typically waive and ignore any crimes. And as the Ape of Wall Street tweeted, he said, now that we know the DTCC is also corrupt and is waiving margin calls for big players during high volatility market conditions, how long do we think they'll be able to do this and keep the market intact? We know that during the January 2021 run-up, the DTCC did indeed waive tons and tons of margin calls, multiple billions of dollars. We know the DTCC and the SEC continue ignoring naked shorting and have done for years and years and years. Naked shorting isn't something that's just came around over the last year or two, it's been happening for the last 20 or 30 years, maybe even longer. I think something that's very important to remember is even though the DTCC can indeed waive multiple billions of dollars in margin calls, what they can't do is waive entire market crashes. The DTCC can waive margin calls, but the DTCC and the SEC could not waive the 2008 market crash. They couldn't waive the dot-com crash back in the 2000s or any of the other recent dips we've experienced over the last 20 or 30 years. Even all-out crashes like what happened in 2008 where over $30 trillion is wiped from the economy, the DTCC can't waive something that large. Therefore, the DTCC, the SEC and Wall Street is trying to do everything they can to stop the Ape and AMC movement before the market crashes. If they can convince us to sell before the market crashes, everything can be waived, the synthetic shorting can continue, and AMC can be seller boxed and made bankrupt. But if they can't stop our movement, the market will continue crashing and an all-out crash will be experienced that will likely destroy many funds on Wall Street. And I think this is why we're seeing such a massive push from the mainstream media and even from certain YouTubers to try and convince you to sell your Ape and AMC shares. Edward Burchuk tweeted saying, from infiltrators inside Wall Street bets to connections to nefarious short sellers, all playing their individual personality while connecting these bad actors to themselves and to each other. The other day we saw a very interesting conversation between a known short seller, John Hempton, and between me, Kevin, trying to convince people to sell their Ape. John said, Kevin, can you explain what feature of AMC is not shared by Ape? For example, does one vote and the other not? I want to understand the differences. Obviously, John Hempton, as a known short seller of AMC, knows the differences between AMC and Ape. He knows what Ape can and can't do, but yet he's asking Kevin for all to see. He followed up by saying, please Kevin, I want to understand what you see and why you see it. Somebody else replied, answering his question, but he further pushed and said, I want Kevin to answer. These known short sellers are trying to prompt YouTubers to bash on Ape and AMC in front of their large followings to obviously try and convince you to sell your shares. But as Peter Han tweeted, he said, interesting. Well, I can tell you that a majority of my AMC posts on LinkedIn over the last 8 months have been viewed by people at the Justice Department. And he said, so hedgies and short sellers, they are indeed watching. This seems to have now escalated past the SEC, past FINRA and the DTCC, to the FBI and the Department of Justice as well. While this investigation is taking some time, as obviously the Department of Justice investigation was announced at the very start of this year, hopefully I do think they will reach the right outcome. Now on top of this, while the market continues crashing, the new Phase 6 margin requirements will soon be phased in. This is effectively just going to add to the current market crash as it forces these hedge funds and these major institutions to carry more cash. That means selling off portions of their portfolio and covering portions of their shorts to free up more cash to have available at all times. Bigham's tweeted here, it raises the minimum capital requirements for banks and trust companies from $100 million to $500 million. And as Cat Striker tweeted, she said it kind of makes sense now why a certain hedge fund, aka Citadel, had to borrow money. They obviously have all of their cash tied up in short positions and their long positions that they can't escape from, and therefore to free up this cash, they simply couldn't and they had to borrow external money. For these hedge funds that are stuck and can't sell off their shares and can't cover their shorts, they will be bitten by these Phase 6 requirements. But guys, be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always guys, be sure to ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.